Some time back, I received, in the name of our country, the bodies of 4 Marines who had died while on active duty. I said then that there is a special sadness that accompanies the death of a serviceman, for we're never quite good enough to them. Not really, we can't be, because what they gave us is beyond our powers to repay. And so when a serviceman dies, it's a tear in the fabric, a break in the whole, and all we can do is remember. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, grave and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up 2 lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. We owe them a debt we can never repay. All we can do is remember them and what they did and why they had to be brave for us.
So at Arlington National Cemetery, it's 600 acres in size, a little over 600 acres. And within that 600-acre cemetery, there's a 14-acre plot of land called Section 60. Has anybody ever visited Section 60? Okay, Section 60 is unique because within Section 60, that is where we lay to rest all those who died in combat in our most recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if you go to Section 60, what really strikes you is when you're walking through the grave sites, it looks like the rest of the cemetery, just those plain white headstones. It's the dates that really get you, is when it says KIA, and then you see 2003, 2004, 5, all the way to 2017, 2018. And you realize how recent those wars were. In our mind, we think of World War II or Korea or Vietnam, and we expect to see 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. But here it's the 21st century. There is no grave prior to 2003. The other thing that hits you when you're there is you see the people who come to visit those grave sites. And again, in our mind's eye, we expect to think of the World War II generation. We expect somebody to be walking up in a wheelchair or with a walker or a stroller, and you see a young woman coming in with children. Or maybe the kids are grown up and they're teenagers now. And at first you think, well, who is she? Is she just a random visitor? And then you realize, no, that's the wife. Right? She might be in her 30s, 40s now. The kids might be 17, 18. And you realize they lost their father or mother when they were 1 or 2 or 3. They never even met him or her. And even the parents who come to visit that site are young. And it really brings home how the end result of all war is that young men and women die. The age group that bears the brunt of combat is between the age of 19 and 29. And that's who lies in those grave sites at Section 60. People from ages of 19 to 29. You might have some 30-year-olds. Very rare to see someone over the age of 40 or even 50 unless they were higher up. The end result of war is young people die. And when you're standing there in front of those grave sites, looking at that, seeing the people who come to visit those sites, you ask yourself the obvious question, which is why, right? The most profound question we can ask ourselves as a human race, which is, what am I willing to die for? And why did they do this? And of course, Memorial Day kind of attempts to, in a way, answer that question. You're going to hear that a lot in videos and parades where they say, well, they died for our freedom. They died in defense of the Constitution of the United States of America. They died so you can be back here and have your rights and sit here today in peace. And I think that's only about half the truth. And I think if you go and you ask veterans, they'll give you the same answer. They'll say, well, I did what I did, and my buddies did what they did to protect you. But there's an armor that they wear, right? They're well trained. They know the answer they're supposed to give you. To really get to the truth of it, you got to really know them, and you got to have served with them. And you have to sit on their back porch at 1 a.m. drinking a beer and smoking a cigar with them. And then they drop the armor and the emotions come out, and they start to tell you about this 4-letter word, which is love. And they're not going to tell you that in public, right? They got to be this sort of macho, hyper-masculine image as a warrior. They're not going to use that word at the Memorial Day parade. But they'll start talking about that when their emotions start to flood out, about love. The love that Jesus talked about in that gospel. And they'll tell you the reason somebody dies in combat, the only reason is because of the love they felt for the guy to their left and right of them. They loved their friend so much that they were willing to lay down their life for him. Greater love cannot be imagined than this, that one will die for one's friends. Exactly what the gospel was talking about today. And that's why they do it. Love. And this is the great warrior secret that nobody really likes to talk about, but it doesn't make it any less true. And that is that warfare is impossible without great love. And I know you're going to puzzle over that. And that's the great paradox of it. And nobody understands it, even though we've known this since man first engaged in war. Warfare is impossible without great love. I know what you're thinking. You're like, man, love, this great emotional energy force that binds us together, brings compassion and generosity to the world, heals, brings peace and joy. How does that produce death and destruction on an industrialized scale? But if you think about it, the only reason people can actually face the terror and trauma and brutality of what war really represents is if love overcomes their fear. All those guys out there who've been in combat, they feel fear. They're not immune to it. So how do they run towards the gunfire rather than away from it? Love. Love conquers all. They see their buddy taking a step forward and they say, I got to follow him. I'm scared, but I'm going to follow him. And I'm going to make sure I put myself in front of him so when the bullet who's coming towards him, it hits me. And when the grenade rolls in a room, I'm going to jump on it so he can go home. Love. And this is troubling to us back here because we don't want to really think about this, that love and war are related, that it's impossible to have one without the other. And so we rationalize it. Humans are really good. We self-rationalize things. And so we like to look at wars and say, well, that was a good war, even though there's no war that is good. We mythologize wars and say, well, we were the good guys, and they were the bad guys, and the good guys had love, and the bad guys were evil, and the love conquered the evil. This is why we often like World War II. We mythologize that war. The war in Europe is really convenient. They were the Nazis, and we were the GIs, the Americans, and we were liberating Europe, and we feel really good about ourselves. The problem is when you start really studying the other side, you realize those guys loved each other too. They were humans too. They had love for one another. And so you get this problem that on one side you have a group of guys that love each other so much they're running towards the sound of the gunfire. On the other side you have a group of guys who love each other and they're running towards the sound of the gunfire. In the middle you have dead bodies. And that's war. War magnifies things. It elevates things beyond what they normally are. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So a good leader becomes an exceptional leader in war. And a poor leader becomes incompetent in war. And a brave man becomes courageous, even heroic in war. And a fearful man becomes a coward, dangerous to himself and to others. And to someone who feels hate or anger in war, that becomes elevated into brutality, war crimes, genocide. But someone who feels love, who has great love in their heart, their love is magnified, elevated to a Christ-like love. The same love that Jesus Christ felt on the cross for us. The desire to sacrifice oneself for one's friends, to protect the other guy. That's the love that those guys who lie in those graves in section 60, that's the love they felt. That's why they're there. And those particular individuals in section 60, throughout Arlington National Cemetery, and military cemeteries across the world, All of them were vessels for this Christ-like love. They had a special gift that God gave them that he may not have given to the rest of us. The ability to face fear and great trauma and great violence and to allow that love inside of themselves to magnify itself and elevate it so that they went forward rather than back. So that they would put themselves in front of other people to protect them without hesitation. They had a special gift. The evidence is there in front of you at the gravesite. And it's tough to think about that. It's tough to think about that. And you have to think and say, these special gifts that they had a special gift from God, this special gift of Christ-like love that allowed them to go forward and protect their friends. Are we using that correctly? They don't hesitate. None of them did. None of them hesitated to throw themselves on that grenade to protect their body, protect their buddies. The question for us is us who hold this national fabric that we call the United States of America, the people who ask them to go or not to go into a war, do we misuse them? Do we misuse these vessels of Christ-like love? Because we put a premium on survival, don't we? We say the most noblest aspiration for someone is to protect us. And so we take these people who have this special gift that their love can be elevated, magnified in great stress and great terror, the thing we call war, and we put them out front to say, protect us. But what if we took that love that they have and that ability for them to magnify that love and put it towards other human endeavors? Imagine what we could do with that. And that's not just pie in the sky theoretical talk. Think of the space program. Where do the majority of our astronauts come from? The military, right? And they take the love they feel for one another and they allow themselves to conduct a very risky mission with the intent to bring everybody home. And we make it into outer space, we make it to the moon. And the way we do it is through love. We'll make it to Mars with that type of love. We'll make it into another universe millions of years from now with that type of love. So imagine what we can do with people who have that very special gift. And I want to be very clear, I'm not an anti-war advocate, I'm not a pacifist. I think war is always, sometimes we're going to have to go to war. It's just a necessary evil sometimes. It's a part of who we are as humans. We're never going to get away from that. And there's going to be times where we're going to need these people who have that special gift, that ability to protect each other, the people who love each other so much that they'll go out there and they'll die for us, die for their friends. We're going to need them to go out there and do that. But I think the real question isn't whether they'll do it. The question is whether we want them to do it. Should we say go, or should we say don't go? The question for everything on Memorial Day is really, have we misused these people? And have we misused them to our own peril? And I'm going to show you here a video here for the reflection area. It's long, it's about 6 minutes. And it's the grave sites at section 60. All right? And I don't think there's any more appropriate time to do this. And I just want you to think about that. As you see these grave sites and you look at the pictures and the mementos left there, is to think about these people and that special gift they had. That special, unique gift of love that God gave them. And to think about, again, not only the lives, the one life they lost, but the lives they potentially lost in the future. Amen.